In professional sports, a franchise player is an athlete who is not simply the best player on their team, but one that the team can build their franchise around for the foreseeable future.
Welcome into Franchise Players here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com, your home for Triad Sports. I'm your host, Desmond Johnson. It's a loaded weekend. We'll get you ready for the Final Four is set. NC State is in there. David Glenn will be here in just a bit from North Carolina Sports Media to talk about this improbable ride for the Wolfpack and to grade the seasons for North Carolina and Duke. We'll get to that here in just a bit. Plus a special interview. Mike Fanning caught up with a North Carolina A&T baseball legend from the 74 championship team. Got a chance to interview him. We'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. Kicking things off, though, it is Wrestlemania weekend, Saturday night and Sunday night. And who better to have on than Outta Pocket with Michael Davis, host Michael Davis. You can catch Outta Pocket with Michael Davis live every not every weekday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 12:30 p.m. on the Tobacco Road Sports Radio YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Tobacco Road Sports Radio. What's up, Mike? What's going on, man?
Hey, I'm excited for Wrestlemania season, excited to be on Franchise Players. So, yeah, let's get into it.
Let's do it. So, this is kind of a preview, WrestleMania over Saturday and Sunday. We all know the hot spots, but I wanted to get to you on some of these questions. Which match are you least looking forward to?
The match I'm least looking forward to, what a way to bury one of these matches on the card. Honestly, they've built a lot of these matches up and done very, very well. I'm not too keen on the 6-woman tag match with Bianca, Jade, and Naomi versus Damage Control, just because I feel like that's the most predictable match on the card. I'm assuming Bianca, Jade, and Naomi win that match.
All right, yeah, because it almost feels like that's built up to kind of build up Jade, and maybe they're building some kind of stable with her and Naomi and Bianca, which would be kind of cool, maybe to go up against Damage Control. Who knows what happens to Damage Control after WrestleMania, for that matter? Because I feel like they may be the ones that lose some belts when the weekend is over with. Usually, Mike, somebody debuts at WrestleMania or comes back at WrestleMania. Who do you think that could be this year?
So you actually gave me this idea when we were talking, I believe, on Outta Pocket earlier this week, and you mentioned Tama Tonga has signed with the company, but he hasn't debuted yet. AJ Styles is turning into a heel, especially when he's went after LA Knight, and it's AJ Styles versus LA Knight this weekend, I believe, on night 2. And so I feel like it'd be the perfect scenario. AJ Styles wrestled Edge a couple years ago, and that's when Edge introduced Damian Priest, and they started forming Judgment Day. How cool would it be 2 years later, AJ takes a page out of Edge's playbook, introduces Tama Tonga, and then we get a version of Bullet Club in WWE. You gave me this idea, so I really enjoy it. Thank you for that.
I mean, they're not really doing anything with Gallows and Anderson. If I'm not mistaken, they're down at NXT, like basically back and forth, but they don't really have a story. They've kind of dropped the whole BC or OC, whatever they were called, the OC, whatever it was, with Mission and Styles, all that little whatever that was seems to be done, but that those links are there. And with the cracks that seem to be showing in Judgment Day, I wouldn't be surprised if Finn ends up coming along with them too. Because remember, the start of Judgment Day, it was Finn trying to convince AJ to come in with them based on their connections together. Remember, they had a little program together, and that's when the Good Brothers came back, because AJ was like, well, I've got friends too, and then that's when they brought them back onto the roster or whatever. I don't know. There's some meat there. There's some story there. And yeah, I agree. Maybe Tama might be the one. I don't know if the average fan would know who he is, like if he shows up. So it might be one of those things where, like when Solo showed up, if you don't watch NXT, you probably didn't know who he was at first. So maybe that might be, but that could be easily explained. Which title match has the best chance for a title change?
I honestly believe it is going to be, I mean, there's several. I feel like Bayley wins against Io Sky. I feel like Bayley needs her moment. But if I had to bank on one of these titles changing hands, I think 2 new sets of tag team champions are crowned in this six-pack ladder match. If you caught on Monday Night Raw, Michael Cole said this six-pack ladder match was for the Raw and SmackDown tag team championships. For the past year and a half, he said that it was for the undisputed WWE tag titles, and the match doesn't end until both sets are retrieved. So hear me out on this one. R-Truth is just hilarious. He's comical. He hasn't had a WrestleMania moment, and he's like the longest tenured WWE roster member. So how great would it be if R-Truth climbed up the ladder, retrieved the Raw set of tag titles, climbed back down, hand them off to Miz, and Miz is like, "What are you doing? You need to get both sets." And by that time, somebody like Austin Theory or Grayson Waller's is pulling down the SmackDown tag titles. Now we've split the titles, and all the WWE universe gets what they want.
No chance of Judgment Day retaining one of these?
No.
No?
And I feel like they're splitting Judgment Day up. Damian Priest also has the Money in the Bank briefcase. So it could be one of these, like Damian Priest loses night one, and then on night two, he cashes in on whoever wins the World Heavyweight title between Rollins and McIntyre and walks out champion.
I could see that, because for whatever happens night one, I feel like Rollins and Rhodes are not going to be 100% going into night two, regardless if they win the tag match or not. So I could see that being kind of layered in as a way for Drew to be able to win. And something that I haven't seen a whole lot of people talking about it. Just a couple have pointed out. I don't think it was last week's Raw. It might have been the week before. There was a segment where they were following somebody through the back. And I wanted to mention that too. The production has been increased on WWE. I don't know if people have noticed it, but like they're doing a lot more single camera work where like they're following a wrestler past the gorilla position into the back, and like it's like a one shot Scorsese type thing where it's like it doesn't cut or nothing, it just keeps going, and like there's people strategically placed along the pathway. There was one of those shots where Drew McIntyre was talking to Paul Heyman in the background of I think it was like New Day and somebody else were talking to each other. I forget somebody. They were standing in the hall talking, but you could clearly see in the back Drew was talking to Paul Heyman about something. And that kind of stuff that they've been layering in. They've been doing a lot of vignettes of like them like on talk shows or whatever, and then getting attacked. I've noticed they've been using that to kind of increase the storylines, especially with the women. They did that with Becky Lynch and Rhea Ripley. Their little brawl on Raw. They did it with Bayley and Sky with her attacking her and the off. They're just doing all these little small things on the side. Rock with the social media. They've really increased and amplified some of these stories. So I do agree that the tag team titles will likely get split up, probably get turned to the world title, the WWE title, like they did with the world championships, which makes sense in case during the drafts, when they switch over or whatever, you don't have that problem again.
And Des,
Which match? Oh, good.
Oh, sorry. I wrote an article for Fans First Sports Network. It only makes sense to split the tag titles because when they were unified, there were like 4 or 5 tag teams total in WWE. Now you have 9 on each brand.
Yeah,
and they're bound to call
NXT.
people up. And they're bound to call people up from NXT. So it's time.
Plus, there's going to be some singles competitors that can be put together in tag teams. And the tag team, Triple H has done a really good job rebuilding the tag team division over the past year and having Judgment Day kind of be the standard bearers for the year. But I agree, it's probably time for them to break that up. I feel like Finn's kind of stalled out a little bit. So let's see. I mean, you got a main eventer sitting here and Judgment Day just kind of playing second fiddle to everybody. I'm curious to see what they do with him going into the new year. What match are you looking forward to the most?
What match I'm looking forward to the most? I'm surprised they actually got a spot on WrestleMania, but it's the Philly Street Fight. It's the Final Testament, Karrion Kross, Akam and Razar versus the Pride, Bobby Lashley, Angelo Dawkins, Montez Ford. And I thought they were going to push this to SmackDown and just like have the feud fizzle out. But this is like Karrion Kross's moment to actually get him launched on the main roster. He was the first re-signing that Triple H had when, he came into control, and Karrion Kross has done nothing. And so beating a former world champion, Bobby Lashley, the Street Profits, multi-time world tag team champions, it would be huge for the Final Testament. And then you can build them up to go up against the Bloodline or go up against Judgment Day, whatever scene you want them in, you could launch them this WrestleMania.
I was going to say, it feels like they're on the wrong show. It feels like they should be on Raw. And then that way you can kind of match them against Imperium or be the next threat to Rollins or whoever's going to end up being champion. Judgment Day, like you said, being on SmackDown, it kind of prevents them from going much further than where they are, because I don't think that they're ready for a Bloodline feud yet. And Bloodline seems to be, I'm not sure what's going to happen after this is over, because this has kind of got a finality to it in terms of this weekend with Bloodline versus Cody or whatever. Unless something's going to spring from whatever happens from this Cody Roman thing that goes to the next thing. Because last year when Roman beat Cody, the next night on Raw was the whole they were going to do the tag match or whatever. Brock comes out and then he F5s Cody, and that starts a whole new program just like that. And Roman just kind of disappears for a couple months. So I don't know if they're going to do something to that reign, or it leads me into who walks out the winner on Sunday night, Rhodes or Reigns.
So we've talked about this for months. You and I either texting back and forth or whatever. I was 90% sure Roman was going to win. And after watching the Roman Reigns documentary, after watching the Cody Rhodes documentary, after watching everything, at least WWE storytelling is making you think this could be closer to a 60-40 Roman retaining. I keep looking at milestones that Roman's yet to hit, and he hasn't passed Hogan yet. And I also look at like who can take over after Roman Reigns. Solo Sikoa is being built up as like the next tribal chief. Roman even said it on an episode of SmackDown back in December, and everybody's forgetting about that. Everybody feels like it has to be Cody Rhodes, and it could very well be Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes could have his moment, walk out as champion, but it just doesn't feel right that they would let this star be built up in AEW and then come and 2 years later beat your guy, because this might be WWE's GOAT.
Yeah, that was my whole point. It's like, it doesn't seem like Paul and Roman would allow that to be a chapter in the story. Like, I don't think there's a chapter in the story where Roman loses the belt and has to fight to get the belt back. And I think a lot of fans have it in their head that's what the end of the story should be for Roman, that he's going to lose the belt, or that the bloodline doesn't need the belt to be the bloodline. They absolutely need the belt to be the bloodline. They haven't been the bloodline without the belt. The belt is the whole point of the bloodline. Like that's what feeds the family. It's him being at the top of the game, like to be the wrestler in all of wrestling. He's the head of the table. Like, he can't be head of the table and Cody Rhodes is the world champion or the universal champion. It just doesn't make any sense. So I look at it in terms of what can they do for 6 months after WrestleMania, depending on the outcome. And there's way more you can do with Roman as universal champ with Rock running around than there is with Cody being the babyface champion with Rock running around. Because to me, that's only just a matter of time before the Rock defeats him for the belt. And then what do you do? Like, you just went 4 years for nothing, and now Rock has it, and the end of the story is going to be him beating the Rock for the belt. That doesn't make any sense. It needs to be the other way around, where animosity is built over a year between Rock and Reigns, just for who's the top of the chain, the final boss or the head of the table. Because eventually they're going to clash about that. That's the WrestleMania main event for next year. Rock versus Reigns for the title. Reigns wins that. Reigns retires. That's where or leaves or whatever. He vacates the thing. Because at this point, I don't think anybody's beating him for the belt. He's going to have to vacate it. Watch the Reigns documentary on A&E that came out this week. Awesome. And you'll come away thinking it doesn't even make business sense for them to have him have Rhodes beat him at this point, like money-wise, gate-wise. Like, the business is so big right now because Reigns is at the top of it, and you add Rock into it. This is one of the biggest WrestleManias I can remember in terms of hype, and the card is really good, like up and down. Like, there's not really any weak spots in the card for both nights. And to have these four guys anchor the show both days, it's amazing. I'm still going with Reigns. I never thought Rhodes had a shot when he got back into this main event, but I had Reigns winning this regardless if it was him versus The Rock or against Cody. Like, I'm looking at the bigger picture, like the bigger story here, and the bigger story is what they've been doing for 4 years, not what Cody's been doing for 2. So Cody will still be a top babyface if he loses. They'll throw Cody right into something the next night on Raw that'll make the fans kind of forget about whatever happened on Sunday. Maybe he challenges Damian Priest if Damian Priest is the champ or whatever. I don't know, but they'll figure something out. But yeah, I agree. Reigns is going to leave with the title. You can catch Outta Pocket with Michael Davis every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 12:30 p.m. live on Tobacco Road Sports Radio's YouTube channel. Mike, anything you want to say before you hop out of here?
Yeah, thanks, Des, for giving me the opportunity with Outta Pocket to, brighten people's lunch days. I also have the wrestling podcast, the Cat Cave as well, that drop on Wednesdays, and then I'm writing articles for WrestleMania through Fans First Sports Network. So if anyone wants continued coverage, there's so many coverage that we've done through Tobacco Road Sports Radio and Fans First Sports Network that you got it covered.
Coming up, David Glenn from the David Glenn Show, North Carolina Media, will talk to us about this magical ride NC State has been on to the Final Four. He'll grade North Carolina and Duke seasons as he saw, and we'll get a little bit into Major League Baseball. Who's the biggest surprise for him for one weekend? You're listening to Franchise Players.
In professional sports, a franchise player is an athlete who is not simply the best player on their team, but one that the team can build their franchise around for the foreseeable future.
Welcome back to Franchise Players here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com. Make sure you subscribe at the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Tobacco Road Sports Radio. You can get great content, Believe in Panthers each week. Myself, Skylar Callahan, and Panthers all-time great Jonathan Stewart. The Keep Pounding Podcast Network is there. There's shows on pro wrestling. There's shows on all kinds of stuff that you can find over on the Tobacco Road channel. Joining us as he does every other week, David Glenn from the North Carolina Sports Network. What's going on, DG? How you doing?
I am doing great, Des. It's always fun to be with you.
We do Sports Buffet when DG is in. It gives me a chance to take advantage of the fact that he knows a lot about a lot of things. So I try to spread it around. But this is a little bit of a special occasion with NC State making the Final Four for the first time since 1983, over 30 years. We'll get to them in just a bit. I want you to grade the seasons of North Carolina and Duke, who both fell short last weekend in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight rounds of the men's tournament. I've been going back and forth with Duke trolls over the past week on Facebook regarding this whole notion that the Duke team was quote unquote soft. And granted, I'm not the only person in the media, local or national, that's labeled them soft. I think a lot of Duke fans kind of mistook soft for being bad, like they're a bad team. And in actuality, to be honest, half of the NCAA field could be called soft. I mean, half the league is throwing up, or half of the bracket is throwing up 30 plus 3-pointers a game. Like, nobody wants contact down in the paint. That to me is what I mean when I say soft, that a team shies away from physical contact. Let's start off with Carolina because they lost first in the Sweet 16. Grade their season for me. They came in as a 1 seed, maybe the fourth 1 seed. I think maybe Arizona losing right before them maybe kind of made them lose their eye on the prize, so to speak. And then by the time they realized they were in a dogfight, it might have been too late, losing to Alabama, who's actually advanced to the Final Four. Give me your thoughts on North Carolina's season as a whole and what Hubert did this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky to give a letter grade because, you know, if it was Virginia Tech or Clemson, which have lesser basketball histories, if you win the ACC regular season and you make the Sweet 16, at some schools, that's one of the greatest seasons in the history of their program. At Carolina, of course, everything is measured against national championships and ACC tournament titles and Final Fours and much bigger things. So maybe a B+. I can't, you know, in the 20-game conference schedule, nobody had ever gone 17-3. So Hubert Davis led these Tar Heels to the best regular season ACC record since they expanded the conference schedule. That's an accomplishment. They made the Sweet 16. That's an accomplishment. They were ranked in the national top 10 for most of the season, and they'll finish there. That's an accomplishment. But they lost to a lower seed in the end, right? And they lost at the ACC tournament within reach of an ACC title to a 10 seed, NC State, that is the lowest seed ever to win the ACC tournament. And then they lost to a 4 seed, a talented and dangerous and offensively explosive Alabama team. But as a 1 seed, you're not supposed to lose to a 4 seed. So there's plenty of good. There's plenty of nitpicking that could be done either about the season as a whole or specifically the loss to the Crimson Tide. But I think there was more good than bad. And one thing I can tell you, Des, after 37 years of covering college basketball, is one of the hardest things to predict is outside shooting. And most of us who follow the Tar Heels closely said one of their only vulnerabilities as one of the best defensive Carolina teams we've seen in decades would be if they went cold from the outside. Now, most people thought that would be Harrison Ingram and Cormac Ryan having a rough night from the outside. It turned out to be ACC Player of the Year, R.J. Davis, who had maybe his worst shooting performance of the season at exactly the wrong time against Alabama. Those things are hard to predict. Those things happen to all programs in all decades. So again, more good than bad for the Tar Heels, but the way it ended, I couldn't give them an A.
What about Duke? Came in kind of cold, lost in the ACC quarterfinals, I believe it was to State, and just came in as a 4 seed. Not a lot of expectations on them. Got 2 double-digit seeds the first 2 rounds. Got them to the Sweet 16. Ended up getting to the Elite 8, facing a Houston squad, and then in that game, shed their all-world, all-American first-team point guard, all-defensive Big 12 Player of the Year. Gets hurt 8 minutes into the game. It completely changed that game around. Duke gets past them, and then they fall in the Elite 8. Give me your assessment of the Duke season this year.
Yeah, B. You know, if you're preseason number 1 in the ACC and you're preseason number 1 nationally, according to some, and you don't win an ACC regular season, you don't win an ACC tournament, and you do make an Elite 8, which should not be shrugged off. That's a significant accomplishment. By Duke standards, it's a B. And I like to remind people, Duke played one of the youngest rotations in all of college basketball this season. Other than Jeremy Roach, the senior guard, most of that rotation was freshmen and sophomores. And we're in an era of college basketball that's never been older, never been more experienced. There's 23, 24, 25-year-old guys all over the place. You know, NC State, the team that beat Duke at the ACC tournament and in the NCAA tournament, has a 6th-year senior in DJ Burns and 2 5th-year seniors in DJ Horn and Casey Morsell and several other 4th-year guys. I mean, those guys are old. They're men. They're experienced. They're literally old, 23 and 24 years old. And Duke had 1 veteran. I know Ryan Young helped a little bit sometimes as a 7th, 8th, 9th man, but it was one of the youngest teams in the country. And in the end, they showed some immaturity against Duke. In the end, there was something weird that happened with their chemistry when they got beat by the Tar Heels on senior night with the guards playing horribly and then got beat in the quarterfinals of the ACC tournament. Those back-to-back losses were a real red flag. Yeah. To Duke's credit, they bounced back and made the Elite 8, but they lost to an 11 seed. NC State, of course.
NC State of all people, like that,
right? I mean, NC State's the lowest seed ever to win the ACC tournament at 10, and ties the lowest seed ever to make the Final Four as an 11. Nobody lower's ever made the Final Four. This tournament's been around for 86 years. So, neither Duke nor Carolina can claim that this is a vintage season. Their standards are too high, but I think it's an exaggeration to say that either one, face planted either. A lot of fans can overreact in one way or the other. Both teams did a lot of good things, and they ultimately fell short of where they thought they should be. By their standards, whether you want to give them a different letter or not, I can't give them an A.
Be curious to see if John Shire changes course and starts using the transfer portal more. And we were talking about it off camera about how the transfer portal, more than anything else, even more than NIL, more than a lot of things, has probably changed college basketball. And you just went through it. NC State has a 7-man rotation where all 7 of the kids, well, I can't even call them kids, all 7 of the men are all transfer students. They all came in from there. We just saw with Carolina with Cormac Ryan and Harrison Ingram coming in from them off the portal. That's the second time now Hubert's gone into the portal and pulled some guys out that have been major contributors to the team and major contributors to the postseason run. And Wake with Steve Forbes, he kind of started out with being really good in the portal, pulling people in, pulling future ACC player of the years out of there, So
Miami's Final Four team was built around major college.
They bought a Final Four team last year, pretty much. So now, granted, it didn't work out for him this year; it backfired. But it feels like Hubert's model, where it's a little mix of the transfer portal, a little mix of top 5 recruits, and a little mix of guys that are like 3-star, 4-star guys that are going to be there for 3-4 years and can continue the culture. Seems to be the way to go. I wanted to talk a little bit about NC State's run. How do you describe it? Is it similar to the 83 run with Jimmy V?
I think it's even more amazing because remember, NC State in 1983, while a wonderful Cinderella story, they did have a top 10 NBA pick in Thurl Bailey, right, at forward. They did have a first-team All-ACC point guard in Sidney Lowe, who went on to be a top 30 pick in the NBA draft, which nowadays we would call a first-rounder, even though back then it was early second round. So those are 2 future pros that, even though the Pack was a relatively low seed and they had a relatively mediocre record in the regular season back in 1983, Of course, they should be celebrated for that magical run. And, they were a 6 seed, though, in 1983. A 6 seed implies some respect for your body of work. Clemson was a 6 seed this year from the ACC.
That's fair.
When you get an 11 seed, man, that's about as low as it could get for a major conference team. And that means you're not expected to do anything. And I mentioned earlier, 11 seeds are the lowest ever to get to the Final Four. The Wolfpack just added its name to that list. That makes it, to me, even more amazing. And as you and I have discussed before, there was no momentum late in the regular season. Anybody who says they saw this coming from the Wolfpack is either lying or clairvoyant.
Yeah.
Because the Wolfpack lost 7 of its last 9 regular season games. I mean, that was real. That was not a mirage. That happened.
Burns was playing like 20 minutes a game. Like, nobody saw him playing like 35 minutes a game once it turned March. Like, you can't call that.
They somehow stuck together. They somehow kept believing. They blocked out the negativity about whether Kevin Keatts was going to get fired or not. And I think they became more unselfish, Des. I think they became a smarter basketball team. They certainly became more together.
Yeah.
These guys look to help each other get open shots way more than they did in the regular season. There was a lot of one-on-one ball, and I'm going to get mine during the regular season. There's none of that now because they've bought into the magic. They just believe. They've cut out all the selfishness. They're playing much harder on defense, and they're playing much smarter on offense. And I think when the book is written, whether they win it all or maybe they finish in the Final Four with a loss to Purdue, keep in mind, it took Kevin Keatts a long time to figure out that Michael O'Connell, not a big numbers guy, made the engine work. He was like putting an oil change for the engine, right? And he's deferential. He wants everybody else to get shots. And if you dare him to take a 3, he'll take it and he might hit it. But he's not looking for his shot. Mo Diarra, it took Kevin Keatts a long time to put him as the full-time power forward. There were games, you checked the box scores earlier this year, there were games O'Connell had 13 minutes or Diarra had 18 minutes. These guys have been playing 35 to 40 minutes during this 9-game winning streak.
Yeah,
they are
great.
They're absolutely central to that starting 5 that has been so efficient defensively and so creative offensively. So there's a lot of angles to this, but I don't know if we've ever had in college basketball history a team lose 7 of its last 9 and then go on a 9-game winning streak in the postseason. I do know, as a matter of fact, there's only one team in history that won 5 games in 5 days to win a conference tournament and then 4 games over 2 weekends to make the Final Four. It was UConn in 2014.
Kemba Walker, yeah.
Kemba Walker, they did it 5 wins in 5 days, Big East tournament. And then not only the 4 wins over 2 weekends, that team went on to win it all. So that's the closest historical comparison we have. UConn was 500 in Big East regular season play that year. And then they find the magic. NC State, remember, was 9-11, a losing record in conference play. This never happens, man. No. Almost never happens. So we could add layers to how insane this all is, but it is one of the most remarkable, stunning, thrilling, unpredictable, mesmerizing postseason runs in the history of college basketball, no matter how it ends.
With us, David Glenn from North Carolina Sports Network and the David Glenn Show. You can follow him on Twitter at David Glenn Show. I agree. And I want to, as a Carolina fan, I think I can speak for the Carolina fan base where we're really happy for NC State. Like, I think a lot of people felt like, well, we'd be happy until they got to the Final Four and then start rooting against them. Nah, most Carolina fans I talked to, they're rooting for State to finish this out. If it was Duke, it'd be different. If Duke won the Elite Eight game, then yeah, we would not be rooting for Duke to advance past Purdue. But with State, we kind of see it's almost like the roles have switched and the State fans have become the ones that we respect, and the Duke fans are the ones that we don't respect based off of the arguments we've been having all year in terms of the teams and the way they're set up and everything else. The State thing, plus there's a level of respect there too. This Carolina team swept Duke. This State team has beaten Carolina in an important game, and that was always the knock that, well, you can't beat them in an important game or whatever. ACC tournament game is pretty important. Beating Duke in an Elite Eight is pretty important. So for them to get there, And the only thing that parallels for me, because the 83 team, that was really the first team for me I can kind of remember, like really, because I was like 6. That's like the first time I'm really watching college basketball. And that team, all their games were close. Like they were all the Cardiac Cats. Like all those games were real tight. Valvano's putting people on the free throw line. There's drama. This state team is beating people pretty comfortably by the time they get to the end of these games. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the same with this Purdue team that's been floating around the AP #1 for most of the year. Zach Edey's probably going to be the 2-time National Player of the Year. I was trying to think of the last person that was a multiple-time Player of the Year because it's been a while. I don't know who's the last time.
And Edey did just get the National Association of Basketball Coaches Player of the Year. So okay. Obviously, there's a lot of different organizations that give that award, but he is officially a back-to-back National Player of the Year. And at 7'4", 300 pounds, that's a heck of a matchup for the Wolfpack. I mean, Ben Middlebrooks and Mo Diarra and DJ Burns have their work cut out for them.
Just throw everybody at him pretty much because Burns, you don't want to get Burns in foul trouble trying to guard Edey one-on-one. You really can't guard him one-on-one. The crazy thing about the whole thing, Burns and Edey, if this was 20 years ago, we'd be talking about them as lottery picks when this tournament's over with. And I'm not even sure if Burns gets drafted. I would assume someone's going to take a flyer on Edey. He's the 2-time National Player of the Year. And you can work with him. But with Burns, I wouldn't mind the Hornets taking a flyer on him in the second round and just sticking him in Greensboro, just see what happens. But that's just the nature of the game today. Can State win the national championship? Because on the other side of this bracket, there's a UConn team that's starting to throw off 1990 UNLV vibes in terms of how much they're winning by margin-wise. But even that UNLV team got beat. Can State do this? Can they actually do this and beat Purdue and UConn?
Probably the most honest way I could put it is I find picking them to beat Purdue to be the hardest one in this 10-game stretch that they're now on. And if they ended up facing UConn for the national title, that would become the hardest one to pick State. UConn is just the prohibitive favorite. They have been a machine. They are mowing people down. But you never say never because Marquette was a really good team and a #2 seed. And you know what happened in that game? It was part of the free spirit with which the Wolfpack is playing. Marquette's point guard, Tyler Kolek, was great. But every one of his teammates looked as if he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. Because they're a 2 seed. They're supposed to beat the 11 seed. Marquette hasn't been in this situation for a while. They had a disappointment in the NCAA tournament the year before. They just felt the pressure. And if the team that feels the pressure as the favorite, if they start well, usually the pressure is alleviated. But if that favorite starts slowly and the Wolfpack gets an 8-point lead, the Duke players started yelling at each other and being distracted by the referees and snapping at their own bench. They're supposed to win that game. And if you get behind, you start stressing out and freaking out and doing unorthodox things. I mean, Kyle Filipowski basically body slammed a guy for his 5th foul. I mean, that's immaturity. That's a loss of poise. The refs don't want to foul you out. If the 5th foul is a close call, they might let it go. If you body slam someone, they're going to call it. Now, maybe the Wolfpack would have won anyway, but there was 5 minutes or so to go in that game when Duke lost its leading scorer. Marquette got no help for their point guard because those guys, they just looked like something different than they were all season. Could that happen with Purdue? It could. They've really chased most of their ghosts. Purdue had a lot of ghosts, given the 16-1 and other postseason failures. They've now exercised a lot of those demons, but they still want to win the national championship. I think State needs to start well, and maybe the Boilermakers would start feeling the pressure that just the way Duke did and just the way Marquette did.
So State will open up the Final Four, the first game, 6:09 p.m. against Purdue, a 1 seed. 6:09 p.m. on TBS. The Final Four in the national championship are on TBS this year. The 4 seed Alabama will take on 1 seed UConn following that in the nightcap, 8:49 p.m. Out in Glendale, Arizona. The national championship will be on Monday, April the 8th, with a tip-off of 9:20 p.m. I wish they could make that a little earlier, but yeah, that's a gripe we have every year. DG, follow him on Twitter at David Glenn Show. You can follow their work over North Carolina Sports Network's YouTube channel. Always a pleasure having you on, DG, and we'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Great to be with you, Des. Keep up the good work.
Back in a bit here on Franchise Players here on TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com.
Reunion Alum Day, and here joining me from that 1974 team, Here's Ernie Gaskins. Thank you, friend.
How you doing, young man?
Good to see you this afternoon as we get things underway. What's it like to come back to War Memorial?
Oh, it's absolutely great. I was just sitting here talking with my some of my old teammates and talking with my son and my daughter. And, it's just a great inspiration for me to have them to be able to come back. And they also were A&T Aggies as well, but to have them to come back and share this moment with me and to see, most important, the old friends. Back in 74, things were, of course, a whole lot different than they are today. We developed a very close relationship, as you can see today. Just to see the fellows at the 50 years does my heart great. And to see that play that right fielder just made.
How
made
about that very first pitch from Barrett goes out to right field, and Shamar Dalton, a diving grab down the line, one up and one down for the Seahawks.
That is a way to start off a game, and but actually just to have my family here, my daughter here, her husband, and have the folk here to support me was really great to be back. But the teams were a little bit different back during that time. Very strong guys. We didn't have all the bells and whistles at that time, but we had a good team, and the most important thing, we had some good ball players that put it together to win that year's championship.
That ball hit up the middle, played on a hop by Wood over to first. 2 down here in the inning. Sitting in with one of those 1974 players, and Ernie Gaskins. You played out in the outfield, correct?
That is correct. I served most of my time as leadoff batter and right fielder. And I broke into the team my sophomore year and maintained that position for the next 3 years. Became one of the tri-captains my senior year, and probably one of the biggest things that one of the things that I really remember most is we had a young man, Al Holland, that you saw today. Mm-hmm. Al was kind of what I would say a man among boys during that time, and he was really the heart and the soul of the team. He was a very, very strong leader, and not only a very strong leader, but a very strong person and a ball player. And he was lucky enough and worked hard enough to make it to the pro level with several teams and do well. But Al was very instrumental in keeping us together along with Coach Grooms. Coach Grooms was a very strong man, but during that time probably had a budget of maybe 1 or 2 assistant coaches, and so they had a lot to do with 1 or 2 people.
2 balls, 2 strikes to Montino, the third to face Barrett here in the top of the first inning. No score, just underway.
That was another piece, too, that, now the team have guys that are from other countries that are having the opportunity to come and showcase their talents on the college level. Back in 74, that was somewhat unheard of, just like a whole lot of other things.
You're going to stick around for another half inning because I want to ask you about Al as well. But this team, the 3-2 pitch is, that's 2-2 pitch, just a little bit outside. So the count goes full here. 2 outs here in the top of the first. Evans the fly out and the great catch there by Shamar Dalton. Trevor Marsh the ground out, and this one's popped into foul territory. Nagishi long run, can't make the play, and we'll do that again. 3-2. 2 outs here in the top of the first. Beautiful sun raining down on this field. Window blowing out to the gap in right center. It was strong last night. Helped the Seahawks tee off on 3 big home runs. And could see the wind play a factor here tonight. The payoff pitch on its way is in there for a called third strike.
Oh, yeah.
And 1, 2, 3 go the Seahawks in the top of the first. We'll come back as the Aggies come into the plate. You're listening to A&T Baseball on Tobacco Road Sports Radio.
Attention.
Jacob Schaefer, 2-3 on the season. 3.74 ERA, 33 innings pitched to go along with 31 strikeouts. Sitting in with one of the captains from that 1974 team, and you can hear him on Right Field WENC, Ernie Gaskins. Ernie, I appreciate you spending a little time with us. We're going to get a chance to talk to more and more players as the day goes on. This is the second annual reunion game And just talking a little bit about how much baseball's changed. I love to talk to guys from your generation. You mentioned it in the top of the first. Guys come from all over, but also, how do you look at baseball today compared to what you were when you were playing?
Quite different, of course. You look at baseball from a professional standpoint. The salaries are just out of this world, but the athletes are a lot faster. I think the athletes are a lot better at their craft. They spend more time. Most of these guys are actually, rather than seasonal players, they're year-round players. And they no doubtly deserve the monies that they receive. And I think that's probably one of the biggest pieces. Of course, the pitchers do not pitch any more than 4 or 5 maybe innings, and you have relievers in the back to finish the game up. So everything now seems like it's a little bit more specialized, shall I say.
Yeah.
Whereas when we came up, you may end up starting in right field, and you may end up at second base.
Dalton the drive out to center field, on his way back and over his head all the way to the wall. It's going to be an easy stand-up double for the leadoff hitter, Shamar Dalton, as he takes it into the right center gap. As I mentioned, that wind blowing that way carries it all the way, and it one tops the wall. So good start here for the Aggies in the bottom of the first.
But one thing for sure, a hit is still a hit. That was a nice gapper and a nice double. So that does remain the same, and I'm sure that young man feel real good about himself about long now. But that was a nice hit to open the game up for the Aggies.
You played for Mel Grooms. Can you speak a little bit to his character?
Yes, Coach Grooms, I would say a gentle giant. Very knowledgeable of the sport. Again, I remember days that we didn't really have a practice field per se. We used the field over closer to campus, and he would always come down in the station wagon, and he would have all the practice supplies in the back of the station wagon, and that's pretty much what practice was about. Did not do a whole lot of batting practice, throwing, but of course he had us that were playing to throw batting practice, and he had some guys that would do that. But just a really, really great person, not only as a coach, but as a mentor in teaching us, how to be men and to be on time. Lots of life skills to keep us and to make us where we are and help us get where we are today. Truly missed. But just a great individual, actually what I would consider a people's person. You enjoyed playing for him. You wanted to win for him, sometimes more so than you did yourself because you didn't want to let him down. But anything that he could do for you as a person off the baseball field, you could always go to him and talk to him almost like a father away from home. So it was enjoyable to play for him during that period of time. And he was a great help after the season, too. He would help us get jobs during the summer and help us play in some semi-pro leagues during the summer as well.
Michael Logan goes down swinging for the first out. Tatsunori Nagishi comes to the plate as Shamar Dalton takes his lead off of second. What do you think made that 74 team, as opposed to some of the other years, a little bit more special and more competitive? As this one's hit up the middle. Play for Jones from short over to first, and a good scoop out of there by Thatch there to an in-between hop, but somehow gloves it. It's going to move Dalton over to third, but now there's 2 gone.
That's a good question. Now, you think back over that year, and you think about, what was special about that team. And to be honest with you, I think sometimes teams just have a tendency to gel at the right time and come together at the right time. And it wasn't so much about any one person. It was, the 9, 10, 12 guys that were the main clogs just kind of put it together, and I think it was a good Lord's will. Hits that would normally be caught would fall in, and things just happened. They just happened. Of course, one of our big rival teams at that time was Howard University that probably had a lot more money involved in athletics and than we did, and of course, but we play Howard. I think we played them 3 times that year, and beat them all 3 times. I just, sometimes I think things just happen because the good man just want them to happen.
Yeah.
And we just came together as a team. Even the teams that Al pitched, the games that Al pitched, we kind of felt like we had to win those games. But the other guys came in and pitched good games, and we got good key hits. And
Canyon Brown at the plate takes this one down the left field line. It'll go foul. Count 1-2, 2 outs as Dalton is standing on third as the Aggies trying to take an early lead. But you talk about, the ball finding the right, sometimes it's caught, but sometimes it drops, and that's just baseball.
And those times, at that time and at the ending of that year, it just seemed like everything was dropping at the right time in the right place.
Did you get a chance to face Al Holland in practice? Did you ever get to see that fastball?
Yes.
Another ball taken down the left field line, but well foul.
And guess what? Really wasn't too happy about taking back and batting practice either, right? But you knew that if you could kind of catch up with his fastball, that you were ready. You were seeing the ball pretty good. And of course, if you could see his fastball, there were not many pitchers during that time that was on his level. I remember playing North Carolina Central. He struck out, I think it was 27 out of the 29 batters. The only 2 balls that were touched was a foul ball over on the first base side and a foul ball to the catcher. And the other 27 people it was just standing a little boring, but at the same time, we didn't realize that we were Sports Illustrated at the time had a article that they called Faces in the Crowd. And I think during that year, he actually was actually in Faces in the Crowd, which were, extraordinary events that happened in sports during that month. And they had a piece there called Faces in the Crowd, and he actually made that twice in 1 month, striking out 26 out of the 29 batters.
1974, he led the nation, .26 ERA. Pretty good.
No, nobody.
Pretty good stuff right there.
Nobody got any hits. Maybe 1, maybe 2 key hits, and basically the way that they would score, it may be on a walk or an error, and then maybe some. And most hits that I remember, very few good solid hits. Most of them were little bloopers or oops, I didn't mean to swing at that, but they did, and it fell in the hole. But for the most part, it was enjoyable to witness that because that's a conversation I have with a lot of young kids now on watching him pitch and the man pitching the boys that he possessed at that time.
Canyon Brown went down on strikes, so Shamar Dalton's leadoff double goes for naught there. No runs, 1 hit, 1 left as we head back to the top of the second. Joined here by Ernie Gaskins, one of the members of the 1974 team. I really appreciate you coming up and spending a little time with me. And do me a favor, go down there and send some more players up.
I'll go down and pass it on to some of the guys and get another perspective.
I appreciate it. Thank you, friend.
All right, bye. All right, be good.